Have you ever stopped to feel deep within your chest that something invisible is moving in your favor in the financial realm, as if a silent spiritual current were opening doors, untying knots, and preparing provision for you in ways your rational mind simply can no longer explain? It is not a coincidence, it is not luck, it is not positive thinking, it is a sign. And what is happening right now at this very moment in the spiritual plane explains exactly why this feeling that something big is about to break forth in your financial life refuses to stop growing within you. There is a game being played in layers that most of humanity cannot see. A game that involves the money that enters your account, the money that slips through your fingers without explanation, and especially the money that was destined for you since before your birth, but which remained held back for decades in an invisible realm, waiting for the exact moment you would wake up to claim what has always been yours by divine right. Think carefully. What if everything you have lived through until now, every hardship, every bill that appeared out of nowhere, every opportunity that seemed certain and crumbled at the last hour, every job promise that vanished without explanation, every sum of money that came in and evaporated as if it had never existed, was exactly the proof that there is an active spiritual dispute over your provision? And what if the truth that the spiritual system does not want you to discover is this: the Almighty has already signed the decree. The Almighty has already released what is yours. The Almighty is already, at this very second, providing heavenly funding for your life. What is missing is for you to understand why the channel was blocked, who blocked it, and how this flow is now being restored at a speed that will startle you in the coming weeks. Because a chosen one is not just someone who has faith. A chosen one is someone who was marked from the womb to carry a key of prosperity that shakes invisible structures. This key was rusted in your hand, and now it is being polished by the hand of the Almighty in person, strand by strand. That is why I prepared the powerful ebook for you, the God's Chosen Guide to Protecting the Family. This ebook is not just reading, it is a map that shows exactly who is playing against your financial life in the invisible plane, what the rules of divine funding are that no church has ever told you about, and what those chosen by the Almighty have already revealed about the exact cycle of celestial provision you are about to enter. This ebook was created for those who have awakened enough to understand that financial scarcity is not destiny, not a lack of merit, not a character flaw, but a spiritual structure rigged against your lineage, which needs to be dismantled with knowledge, not with more desperate prayer repeated in the dark. The link is in the first comment pinned at the top of the comments, but I must warn you, this type of content rarely stays available for long. What is written in these pages challenges narratives that many have an interest in keeping intact, especially the narrative that a chosen one must live in hardship to prove humility before heaven. There have already been real attempts to silence this knowledge before, so do not wait for the right moment. The right moment is now, chosen one. Download it now and write in the comments with conviction, "I am chosen and I will download the ebook," because you did not arrive at this video by chance. You were pulled here by the same invisible hand that is opening the celestial vault above your head at this very instant. Now that you have decided to act, the next truth I will deliver to you will leave you breathless. Because the biggest lie they have preached to you your entire life was this: that money is a worldly thing, that prosperity is a temptation, that wealth draws you away from the Almighty. This is spiritual poison disguised as doctrine. Whoever invented that was not the Almighty. It was a very old enemy who knew exactly what it was doing, because it understood that if it could convince the chosen ones that poverty was holiness, it would disarm an entire generation without needing to fight. Imagine an army that refuses to pick up its weapon because it thinks weapons are things of the enemy. That is exactly what happened to you and your entire lineage. Money, in the mouth of the Almighty, is a tool of the kingdom. It is mission input. It is the fuel of purpose. When the Almighty funds your life, He is not giving you money to corrupt you. He is equipping you to execute that which was written about you before the foundation of the world. You were not called to survive, you were called to distribute, and nobody distributes what they do not have. And this is exactly where the spiritual game gets dangerous, because when the chosen one discovers that the Almighty is releasing provision over their life, the invisible system panics. You cannot imagine the amount of blockages that were strategically placed over your financial life throughout the years. Blockages inherited from grandparents you never even knew. Blockages pronounced by people who felt envious of your shine. Blockages made in places you never stepped foot in by people you never saw. All so you would never step onto the terrain of supernatural provision. And the worst part, most chosen ones live their entire lives without ever discovering that these blockages exist. They think it's bad luck. They think it's incompetence. They think it's just a phase. It is not a phase. It is war. And you are in it, whether you like it or not. But pay attention now, because the turning point has already begun. There is a spiritual window open in this present time, a rare window that opens only a few times in a generation. In this window, the Almighty releases what the ancients called heavenly funding. It is not common prosperity. It is not a salary raise. It is not a slow promotion at work. It is a supernatural movement where heaven pours resources over the life of the chosen one at a speed disproportionate to their effort. Money arriving from places you never imagined. Debts being paid off by hands you will never know. Doors opening with people appearing out of nowhere in your life without you having asked, without you having looked. Businesses prospering before you even understand what is happening. This is the sign of someone who has entered the flow of divine funding, and you are about to enter. The signs are already manifesting. That strange thought about a new idea that won't leave your head, that recurring dream, that person who suddenly popped into your mind, that number you keep seeing all the time, that restlessness that seems to say, move now. All of this is the Almighty calibrating your radar so you do not miss what is being delivered, because provision arrives, but the distracted chosen one does not notice when it passes them by. And this is where the majority lose the entire cycle, years waiting for heaven to open, and when it opens, the chosen one is looking the other way, distracted by the size of their own problems. That is why this ebook needs to be in your hands before this cycle passes, because the God's Chosen Guide to Protecting the Family is not a book of theory. It is a spiritual training so that you recognize the exact moment when divine funding begins to operate over your life, identify who is trying to block this flow in the invisible, and learn the prayers, the decrees, and the spiritual postures that unlock the celestial drawers of provision that were sealed over your lineage for generations. This ebook reveals things that no pastor teaches from the pulpit, because most do not even know these structures exist. It shows who plays against your prosperity, how these players act behind the scenes, and how the chosen one can revoke every spiritual contract of scarcity that was signed in their name without them knowing. The link is pinned in the top of the comments ready. This content directly challenges the spiritual engineering that profits from the suffering of the chosen, which is why they have tried to take it down before, more than once. Download it now and write with faith. I am chosen, and I will download the ebook. This comment seals your spiritual commitment to the provision that the Almighty is releasing over your home. And now that you have confirmed your place, I need to tell you something that will change your relationship with money for the rest of your life. There are 3 spiritual codes that govern heavenly funding, and the absolute majority of Christians spend their entire lives without ever discovering even the first one. The first code is that of the sealed identity. You only receive what you believe you are worthy of receiving, and most of the chosen have been programmed since childhood to believe they deserve little. Parents who repeated that money is hard. Preachers who said that wealth is a sin. Teachers who reinforced that you have to be content with what you have. Each of these phrases was an invisible nail sealing a financial door upon you, and the Almighty respects free will. If you believe you deserve little, He will not force abundance onto an identity that still sees itself as small. But the moment the chosen one awakens, the moment he recognizes himself as a legitimate child of a kingdom without limits, the moment he internally tears up the contract of inherited poverty, the first celestial drawer opens. You cannot imagine how much your identity is still tied to phrases spoken by people who are no longer even in your life, but whose words continue to echo in your mind every time you think about being bold. The second code is that of prophetic alignment. Every life has a purpose signed by the Almighty before birth, and divine funding only flows toward the purpose. If you are living an unaligned life, Spending your years on something that was not written about you, heaven does not fund it. Out of love, the Almighty dries up the channel to force you to stop and look at your trajectory. Much of what you interpreted as divine punishment in your financial life was in reality divine redirection. The Almighty closing a wrong route to push you toward the right one, even if it hurts. The chosen one who understands this stops fighting against scarcity and begins to ask, Lord, what am I trying to build that is not your will? And when this question is asked with sincerity, heaven answers, and the correct route begins to reveal itself with frightening clarity. The third code is that of the clean channel. Divine provision is like living water. It flows through channels, and every chosen one has spiritual channels through which provision should descend. But these channels get clogged with old hurts, words spoken in anger, unconscious pacts made in moments of despair, vows you made and forgot, resentment against someone who betrayed you, or jealousy of another's prosperity. Each of these spiritual obstructions acts like a plug inside the pipeline of heaven. And as long as the channel is clogged, it could rain money over your head and nothing would reach your hands. Clearing the channel is not just about praying more. It is about confronting these internal structures with light, with truth, with conscious renunciation. And this is something most have never been taught to do. Now think with me. How many years of your life have you lost fighting against a scarcity that wasn't external, but internal? How many opportunities have you sabotaged without realizing it because a part of you believed you didn't deserve them? How many times have you attracted the wrong people to your work, your partnerships, your marriage, because your frequency was still vibrating at the standard of poverty you inherited? It is not your fault. You didn't receive the God's chosen guide to protecting the family. No one gave you this map. You were thrown into life with a broken compass and told to run, and yet you made it this far. That in itself is proof of who you are. Imagine now with the compass fixed. Imagine with the map in your hands. Imagine knowing exactly which spiritual channels you need to clear so that divine funding begins to flow without a dam. It is precisely this unlocking that is happening right now as these words reach your ears. Something in your spiritual field is reorganizing. An old layer is peeling away. A new identity is being born. And this identity does not match the size of your bank account today. That is precisely why everything will change in the coming months, so that the external finally corresponds to the internal that has already been reformed by the finger of the Almighty. But pay attention, all of this has an adversary. Where there is release, there is resistance. Where there is provision, there is an attempt at retention. And this is the point where many chosen ones fall. They begin to feel the wind of the turnaround. They begin to see the first signs, and then the turbulence appears. Arguments at home out of nowhere, unjust accusations at work, sudden illnesses in loved ones, news that seems destined to bring you down exactly at the moment you are rising. This is no coincidence. This is the spiritual retention system trying to make you give up on the turnaround. Those who don't know how to identify this, retreat. Those who don't have the map believe it's a sign that it wasn't meant to be. But the trained chosen one understands. Turbulence before provision is confirmation, not denial. It is the last breath of a system that is losing its hold on you. And in this moment, what you need is no longer generic faith. It is applied spiritual knowledge. It is knowing exactly what to say, what to do, and especially what to stop doing, so that the turnaround is completed without being aborted. That is why this ebook was written the way it was. God's chosen guide to protecting the family brings in direct and straightforward language the spiritual protocols that break any structure of financial retention over your life and your lineage. It teaches you how to identify which doors need to be closed, which decrees need to be revoked, which specific prayers activate the heavenly release over your entire family, and how to shield everything that is being conquered so that nothing that enters escapes through the back door. This ebook is what separates the chosen one who sees the turnaround happen from the chosen one who feels the turnaround coming and loses it due to lack of preparation. The link is in the first comment pinned at the top. And I will repeat it, because I know there is someone listening to this who is still in doubt. This type of content suffers constant attacks because it dismantles the spiritual engineering that keeps entire families enslaved to cycles of hardship, generation after generation. They have already tried to silence it, they have already tried to take it down. And they still try. So download it now, not tomorrow, now. And comment with conviction, "I am chosen and I will download the ebook." This comment is more than a click. It is a verbal decree of faith, a public seal upon your claim in the heavenly court. Now that this commitment has been made, I want to give you the most delicate part of this revelation. There is something no one has told you about divine funding, and which may be the reason you have spent so long waiting for something that was already released. The Almighty provides, but the Almighty provides with intelligence. He does not throw gold into the lap of someone who is not yet prepared to manage gold, because He loves you too much to give you a provision that will destroy you. How many people do you know who gained a lot at once and lost it all? How many stories have you heard of people who received an inheritance and in 2 years were worse off than before? This is not bad luck. This is a lack of internal structure to sustain what has arrived. And the Almighty, in His infinite wisdom, prefers to delay your release rather than give you what will break you. He is funding you, yes, but He is funding you in phases, and each phase requires you to climb a step of spiritual maturity. The money is coming, and it will arrive in the exact measure of your capacity not to lose yourself with it. That is why it is so important for you to position yourself now. Each day you prepare yourself spiritually, the more acceleration the Almighty releases, because He sees that you are ready to receive without deviating. And here is the key that few understand. True prosperity is not just about how much comes in, it is about how much stays. It is about how much of the provision remains with you without corrupting you, without putting you in debt, without hardening you, without distancing you from the purpose that justified its release. The mature chosen one understands that being financed by the Almighty is a responsibility. It is carrying resources to advance the kingdom, to bless the family, to set entire generations free. Those who understand this receive much. Those who do not understand receive drop by drop, through the medicine dropper of immaturity. And that is why, chosen one, this turnaround needs to start with your mind before it starts with your bank account. Because your bank account is merely a photograph of your mind. If your mind is still small, your account will remain small, no matter how much the Almighty releases. And if your mind grows, your account follows. Therefore, starting today, I want to ask you one thing. Stop declaring poverty over yourself. Stop saying I am broke. Stop saying I don't have it. Stop saying it's impossible. Each of these phrases is a spiritual knife cutting the channel that is being opened right now. Start training your mouth to speak like a son. Start saying I am provided for. I am financed by the kingdom. I do not depend on the system, I depend on the source. And observe what will happen. In a few weeks, you will begin to notice that small things start to align. A bill disappears when you least expect it. An offer appears without you asking. An idea unlocks an income that was stagnant. And gradually the external turnaround manifests because the internal turnaround has been accomplished. The Almighty does not fail to finance those who position themselves as sons. But the Almighty also does not move for those who position themselves as beggars within His own kingdom. You were created to reign. Start speaking like someone who reigns. Start walking like someone who reigns. Start making decisions like someone who reigns. And soon you will be reigning, even if today you are still sitting amidst bills. Remember, a king sitting amidst bills is still a king. What defines royalty is not the setting, it is the identity, and your identity was sealed before the world existed. What remains is for you to live it with boldness. And to equip you on this journey, this ebook is the most direct tool I could place in your hands. God's chosen guide to protecting the family condenses years of study, revelation, and spiritual practice into material that you can read in a few hours, but which will reverberate within you for the rest of your life. It teaches you to operate your mind as a kingdom mind, to guard your provision as a faithful steward, to protect your family from the spiritual harassments that try to steal everything that comes in, and to build a spiritual financial structure that spans generations. This ebook is the foundation you needed to enter this new cycle of divine funding with your head held high. The link is at the top of the comments. pinned, ready. This content is not distributed on a large scale because it disturbs a system that prefers you dependent, fearful, docile, and silent. They have already tried to silence it. They will try again. Therefore, download it now. Confirm in the comments with faith, "I am chosen and I will download the ebook." This act is a seal of covenant. It is you saying to heaven, "I am ready, I am available, and I will walk." And now in the final stretch of this revelation, I want to leave you with the highest truth of all. You were not placed on this earth to beg. You were not created to count pennies. You were not chosen to shame your Father's name by living below what He has prepared for you. The Almighty is at this very moment when these words reach you, organizing the backstage of your life, so that everything that was withheld may be released in successive waves. People will appear. Doors will open. Ideas will wake you in the middle of the night. Unexpected invitations will arrive. And you will look back a year from now and remember this exact moment, this video, these words, and you will understand that this was the turning point. This was where you stopped living as an orphan and began living as an heir. This was where you cut the umbilical cord to the scarcity mindset and were reborn into the abundance mindset. Do not fear the magnitude of what is coming. Do not doubt what the Almighty wants to give you. Do not retreat before the trials that will try to knock you down in the first few weeks of this turning point. Each trial is just the final test before the definitive opening, and you will pass. Because you have already survived battles worse than this, alone, without a map, without direction. Imagine now, with the entire heaven cheering for you and the right knowledge in your hand. Stop worrying. Stop. Breathe. Feel it. That tightness in your chest that follows you every night. That obsessive mental calculation about next month. That anxiety that appears every time the bill arrives. All of this is residue from an old life that is being ended. The worried person fights alone. The chosen one trusts the financier. And your financier is not a bank manager. It is the owner of the gold and the silver. It is the Father who signs a blank check in the name of the Son who recognizes His own identity. Before you leave this broadcast, do one thing for yourself. Go now to the first pinned comment at the top and download the God's Chosen Guide to Protecting the Family. This ebook is your financial spiritual survival kit for this new time. It answers the questions you do not have the courage to ask out loud. It dismantles the invisible structures that still hold back your lineage, and it gives you the step-by-step guide so that everything the Almighty is releasing reaches you without deviation, without leakage, without undue retention. Do not leave it for later. Later is the enemy's favorite word. Later is the place where no chosen one ever arrives. Now is the time. Now is the hour. Now is your name being called from the kingdom. And when you download it, comment with faith, "I am chosen and I will download the ebook." This comment is not a statistic, it is a decree. It is your mouth sealing what the Almighty has already released in the invisible realm. And know this, you did not reach the end of this video by chance. It was not the algorithm. It was not curiosity. It was the hand of the Almighty leading you from the first second, preparing you, aligning you, calling you by name. And now the invitation is made. Accept it. Raise your head. Straighten your shoulders. Take a deep breath. And understand once and for all. The time of scarcity is over. The time of divine funding has begun. And you, chosen one, are exactly at the center of it. Go in peace, but go with haste, because your name is already written in the decree. All that is missing is for you to sign it below, with your faith, with your mouth, with your action. And this signature begins now, with the click of that link, with the comment you're going to leave, with the silent decision that will sprout within you when you close this screen and say to yourself, "Enough. From today on I worry no more, because the one who signs for my provision is He who has never failed to provide for anyone who truly trusted in Him. And you, chosen one, will be the next testimony of this generation.